Dear friends, ever since George Smith discovered and translated the epos of Gilgamesh in 19th century, and most specifically its tablet 11, with the story about Utnapishtim and the flood, theologians, especially Christian theologians, had a problem. Up until that time, there were people who insisted it was an historical reality. Well, there are still such people, but that would be for another video. Up until that time, all the flood stories around the world were viewed as coming from the one original, biblical. All those different stories from different cultures and religions were taken as confirmation of a global event. And their differences were just explained as differently mutilated or corrupted versions of that only original story, which they claimed was, of course, the one in the Bible. But then the Gilgamesh 11th tablet came and presented undoubtedly much older, mythical, pagan, polytheistic version of this story. And as I said, ever since that time, Christian theologians had been twisting themselves into pretzels, trying to explain why the biblical flood story is different from all those other stories, why all those other stories are pagan myths, and the biblical story is not, definitely not a myth, but a lofty, noble theology. And even such an illustrious theologian like Walter Brueggemann, who taught for decades in the Presbyterian Seminary in Georgia, in his commentary to Genesis is attempting to square this circle. He writes, "With equal firmness, we must deny that this is a myth expressed in Israel just as it is in every other ancient culture. It is undoubtedly borrowed from a common religious tradition of flood accounts. However, in this text, the flood narratives has been claimed to express the peculiar theological affirmations of Israel's faith. Our exposition will indicate that the theological intent of the story, as shaped in Israel, has significantly altered it from the purposes of earlier traditions." And to paraphrase it, in the Bible it is not a myth because Bible only used a mythic material, mythic story to address its own theological concerns. But friends, that is the very essence of a myth, and especially as powerful and old as the flood myth. Each culture, each religion, each tradition, even each time period and each author takes the basic storyline and populates it with their own pantheons, their own gods, and their own cultural heroes. They use the story to narrate their own theologies and also their own cultural struggles, fears, hopes, and aspirations. From Sumerian Utnapishtim, biblical Noah, Plato's or Ovid, Deucalion, Manu of Hinduism, or stories of Native Americans, Maya people, pagan Irish, or Polynesian from Aotearoa, they all have their own flood stories, and with that powerful frame, they also deal with their own fears and hopes, modulating on that one archetypal story, different pantheons, as I said, different theologies, different ethics, different morals, different social principles. That is the essence of it, not a biblical exemption. And so it is absolutely all right to call it a full-blooded myth, even in the Bible. And that is something you might not know about the biblical flood myth. Join us this Sunday when we take the biblical version of this myth. It's one small constitutive part, and allow the birds of this story to talk to us and bring us a message of hope.